Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots Monday Morning, where we go over the Sunday morning news shows so that you don't have to. I'm Aaron Maté. Katie Halper is out this week, so sitting in once again is Rania Khalek. Hello, Rania.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me back on.
Rania, you are the host of Dispatches on Breakthrough News. And last time you were here, a few weeks ago, it was Doc Talk, right? Remember that? It was just all pretty much document time.
Yeah, I was all docked out.
But this week we have a bit more flavor, thankfully, for everyone. So let's get to it. And we'll start off with the one and only Chuckster.
Good Sunday morning. After the murder of George Floyd, there seemed to be a bipartisan consensus that something had to be done on the national level. But nothing happened. Now we're watching this brutal beating of Tyree Nichols in Memphis, Tennessee, and asking, how can this be happening again? And will this be the moment that sparks real action nationally? Look, it's not a secret that Americans are losing confidence in their institutions, including the police, and their political leaders in general. In fact, our new NBC News poll that's out this morning paints a picture of a deeply pessimistic country, distrustful of government in general, with an overall outlook that is historically bleak. Asked to describe where America is headed in the next year.
I just want to shout out that he just promoted socialism by accident with the signs. It was did you see the signs?
Oh, I missed it. No, what did it say?
Well, it was for the Answer Coalition, which is a socialist organization.
Okay, all right. Hey, Answer getting some love on it.
Yeah, there you go. Totally by accident. Thanks, Chuck.
In general, with an overall outlook that is historically bleak. Asked to describe where America is headed in the next year, more than 2/3 use negative words and phrases: downhill, wrong track, disaster, hard times, and uncertain. It's both sides of the aisle, folks. This is.
I wonder why that is. Why are people feeling so bleak right now at a time when we have, constant mass shootings, we have an apocalyptic proxy war going on, record levels of people who are foregoing medical care because they can't afford it.
Mm-hmm. Homelessness.
Hey.
Job precarity, people having to work in the gig economy, 2 or 3 jobs to get by, lots of debt. It's the other thing too is Chuck seems really surprised. I think Chuck is doing okay and he's happy with the direction of the country, because he's like, wow, our polls show these numbers from both parties that I can't quite grasp. I also appreciate the word cloud. I like why?
Yeah. This is a situation where maybe we can get some synapses going here in the minds of cable news hosts and their producers. Like, okay, vast numbers of people are saying this country is going down the tubes, that things are terrible. And they're listing all these issues. Given that it's our job to cover the country and the issues it faces, why don't we cover these issues and try to find out why people are so bleak instead of focusing on things like Doc Talk every single week, classified document fights between 2 factions of the elite.
Also, when he opened, he was talking about how could this happen again to just another person after the George Floyd stuff? How has nothing changed? Well, a part of it is that I assume, I think it's a safe assumption that on Sunday morning news programs such as the one that Chuck Todd hosts, any action that is put forth to do something about out of control policing in America is shut down as something negative. And I don't have the clips to show it, but if I had time to look, I bet I could find clips of Chuck probably pushing back against people who want to do something about police brutality.
Yeah, well, it's the murder of Tyree Nichols in Memphis is the latest manifestation of this, and there is some talk of that this week, but it's only discussed when horrific murders happen. Otherwise, it gets pushed out of the news. And let me pause for a second and say, if you don't like the direction of the country, but you do like the way we're covering the Sunday news shows talking about the bleak direction of the country, give this stream a like, because that apparently helps us with the algorithm. So give this video a like if you can. And let's get back to Chuck.
And just one-sided. Full 71% of Americans say the nation is on the wrong track. We are in the longest sustained period of a wrong track number that high in the history of our poll. It's nearly been 2.5 years of this sustained pessimism. It's longer than the 2008 financial crisis. And now the country is reeling after the release of this graphic video. We're here to warn you again. This video is very disturbing. In an assault caught on police surveillance and body cameras, Memphis police officers punched, kicked, tased, pepper sprayed, and swung a baton at 29-year-old Tyree Nichols, who was unarmed. Nichols was pulled over in a traffic stop, which the police department initially said was due to, quote, reckless driving. But Memphis Police Chief C.J. Davis, who has called the killing of Nichols heinous, reckless, and inhumane, says investigators have been unable to substantiate that claim. Again, this video is disturbing. Here's a portion.
Damn, I didn't do anything. Hey, I didn't turn your ass around. All right. Hold the ground. You don't do that, okay? Get on the ground. Get on the ground. Okay. Tase your ass. Tase. All right, I'm on the ground. Lay down. Chest up. Please stay on the ground. I think tase you. Get on the ground. Lay down. One. Now. All right. Okay. All right.
After an officer pepper sprayed Nichols' face and used a taser on him, even though he was not resisting, Nichols then twisted himself away from officers and started to run away. Minutes later, officers caught up with him. He was less than 100 yards from his home.
You wipe your hey.
Give me your hand. Give me your hand.
You might get sprayed again. Hey. Hey, Mike. Hey, bro. Watch out.
Give me your hand.
Mom! Hey.
Give me your hands. Give me.
Okay, all right.
Give me your hands. Give me your.
All right. Okay. All right. Huh? Hey, Mike, give me your hands, bro.
Give me your hands.
Watch out. Spray your ass again. Hey, give me your hands, bro. Watch out.
Spray. Give me your hands, bro.
After the officers stopped beating Nichols, it took 28 minutes for an ambulance to take Nichols to the hospital. He would die in the hospital 3 days later. Nichols worked for FedEx and had a 4-year-old son. 5 officers have been fired and charged with second-degree murder, aggravated assault, aggravated kidnapping, official misconduct, and official oppression. The Justice Department is conducting a civil rights investigation into the death. 2 Shelby County Sheriff's deputies have also been relieved of duty, pending an internal investigation, as well as 2 members of the Memphis Fire Department. All of them were seen in the longer version of that video. Protests erupted across the country, from Memphis to New York to Los Angeles. And in a statement late on Friday, President Biden called the killing, quote, yet another painful reminder of the profound fear and trauma, the pain and the exhaustion that Black and brown Americans experience every single day.
I love it when the author of the crime bill, which incarcerated so many Black and brown people, talks about fear and trauma among those communities.
I mean, it's also not just in the past. Since he's become president, he's actually increased police funding and made a point to be like, we're against this defund the police stuff, and we're going to prove it by giving more money to policing. And that's what Democrats have been doing. I mean, it's really astonishing. Like, if you're going to have, I appreciate that Chuck, our friend Chuck here, showed the video in some of its brutality, and the actual like entire video is even worse than that. And obviously, it's like really tugs on your heart to hear him calling for his mother the way he was. I appreciate that he showed that video and that he's obviously being very like sober in the way he's talking about it and serious. But at the same time, like, if you want to have a real conversation about this stuff, if you really care about why this stuff is happening, talk about the fact that police killings not only keep increasing, but they're being funded and armed even more by both parties. Like, there's nobody doing anything to actually address these issues except these empty statements whenever some video comes out of a heinous murder.
Yeah, Edward Snowden had a tweet where he said, if you want to stop this, take away the immunity that these officers have, because otherwise they just have impunity, because they know that they'll never have to suffer the consequences of acts like this, of crimes like this. And that is not really seriously discussed, at least at this level.
Also, the entire institution of policing in America exists to protect property and to protect wealth. And so it's the people who are targeted by police are people who look and seem to be working class and poor. and that's very racialized in America. So you have, the targeting of Black and brown people, but also poor white people and working class white people get targeted by police too, which doesn't get discussed as much. And I think that's partly because that would really like poke a hole in the notion that there's something class-based about this. But anyways, like those conversations aren't happening.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Well, we just thought it was important to show that for everyone who hasn't seen that clip, because it should be out there, although there's nothing to make fun of there. So we're going to move on to other topics. And Jim Jordan, Congress member of Ohio, he had a fiery interview with Chuck Todd because now Jim Jordan is the head of the Judiciary Committee, and Republicans, among their new initiatives taking control of the House, they've stood up a new committee to investigate intelligence agencies, and they're pursuing a series of grievances that they have there. And now there was just a recent development where this FBI agent named Charles McGonigal was arrested this last week.
It's a funny last name.
On allegations of taking money from Oleg Deripaska, who is a Russian billionaire, who was he owns some aluminum factories and is very, very wealthy. And his name has been floated around in U.S. media in recent years because he became a part of Russiagate conspiracy theories, because at one point he worked with Paul Manafort, who was Trump's campaign manager. He also worked with Christopher Steele, the author of the Steele dossier, but that part doesn't get discussed very much. Anyway, Jim Jordan was on Meet the Press to speak to the Chuckster, and this came up.
You're calling the weaponization of the federal government and law enforcement communities and the Judiciary Committee. You're also chair of that. Yeah. What's the distinction here, and why are you chair of both?
Well, that's what the leader wanted. That's what Speaker McCarthy wanted, and the Select Committee has some non-Judiciary Committee members on it. Members from the Intelligence Committee, the Energy and Commerce Committee, and Homeland Security are part of that committee. The weaponization is we have that because of what we've seen in various agencies over the last couple of years. I mean, I'll just take the FBI, for example. The FBI spied on the president's campaign, altered evidence in front of the FISA court, paid a confidential human source even after they knew that confidential human source had lied to them. The FBI has targeted parents. The FBI has done a number of things.
I was with him on the part where he says the FBI has targeted parents. I still don't know what that's about. That's about school boards, and I haven't followed that story too closely, but it's a big Republican talking.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. There's something about parents complaining about school boards, and then the FBI somehow went after them.
Really?
That's the theory. I mean,
that doesn't sound real. I'm sorry.
I'm predisposed to question that one. But before that, what he said was accurate because he's talking about Russiagate, anyway. But I just had to say that about the school board thing because, we'll have to do a deep dive into that some other time because I'm curious about what's going on there. Who knows?
The FBI is like raiding the homes of like middle and upper middle class suburban parents.
Yeah. Questionable.
I mean, the FBI raided the home of a former president 91 days before an election, took the phone of a sitting member of Congress, and on we can go. And then just last week we learned that a former FBI agent, special agent in charge of counterintelligence in the New York division, was taking money from a Russian. And this wasn't just, this was the special agent in charge of counterintelligence in New York, taking money from Oleg Deripaska, not just any Russian, the Russian.
Yeah,
and he was also,
who his American advisor was, Oleg Deripaska, the former campaign manager to Donald Trump's campaign,
I understand.
Paul Manafort.
I understand.
This is so. But does this not raise some troubling signs here?
It sure does.
Paul Manafort was the go-between for Oleg Deripaska. He gave him polling information on the campaign.
He also paid Oleg Deripaska.
Okay, so Chuck right there just repeated what was once like the top story in U.S. media because it was a Russiagate conspiracy theory that Paul Manafort, as part of the secret Trump-Russia plot, took polling data from the campaign and gave it to Oleg Deripaska. And he did this through his business associate, a guy named Konstantin Kalimnik. And I've covered the story a lot. It's too boring to go into the details now.
Yeah, for a second I was worried at like time went backwards.
Yeah,
Did we just like travel back? Yeah.
But basically, in short, this is a conspiracy theory that's been debunked a million times. Oleg Deripaska never got any polling data from Paul Manafort. And what Paul Manafort was trying to just show all of his former business associates that Trump had a chance of winning. Because Manafort, while he was Trump's campaign manager, thought and hoped that his position as Trump's campaign manager would lead to more business opportunities for him after the election. So he was just trying to get people polling data to show, hey, look, we have a shot at this. But the Blue Anon conspiracy theory is that Paul Manafort took secret polling data, gave it to the Russians, and then Vladimir Putin and the GRU poured over this polling data and used that to tailor their sophisticated influence campaign to brainwash millions of Americans into voting for Trump. And that influenced how, for example, they put out Buff Bernie memes and other dumb memes that nobody saw. But so this is just basically, this is conspiracy theory nonsense, but it's completely at home in establishment media because they all went in on Russiagate. So that's what Chuck is referring to there.
And he's so passionate.
Oh, yeah.
Also paid Christopher Steele, who was the key guy on the whole Steele dossier that launched the Trump-Russia investigation. Guess who one of the people was who involved in launching that? Mr. McGonigal.
So anyway, this is getting convoluted, but the point is, one problem with this conspiracy theory that Oleg Deripaska, this Russian oligarch, was like taking polling data to give it to the Kremlin for the Kremlin to brainwash Americans, is that Oleg Deripaska also hired Christopher Steele, the author of the Steele dossier, which is like the foundational document for all these insane Trump-Russia conspiracy theories. And Steele even lobbied U.S. officials to have sanctions removed on Deripaska. And anyway, it's just it's one more.
It's a big hole. It's a big hole in that whole narrative. But also, I thank you. I just want to express gratitude to you, Aaron, for having the patience to continue to follow these names and these people and these things, because I just don't even know it. And also, I think, I want to give Chuck the benefit of the doubt. I think that perhaps we should write him a letter. Maybe he doesn't know. No one told him that these are conspiracy theories. It's kind of sad, It's kind of like your QAnon, distant relative who lives across the country. I have one of those who's just gone down a rabbit hole. That's how I feel about Chuck. He's just gone down a rabbit hole. And we need to have some some sympathy.
Joe, of course I do. I mean, this is why I call it Blue Anon, because, whereas QAnon is relegated to fringe chat rooms on the internet, Blue Anon dominates the airwaves. It's professional media workers and cable news hosts and who believe all this stuff.
How do we help these people who've been dragged down into this dark place where they're just surrounded by nonsense?
It's a great question. It's a great question. Great question.
By the way, I think also, Aaron, I'm going to pull a Katie and note that there are over 1,000 people watching, which is great, yet only 432 likes. And last I checked, 432 is less than half of 1,000.
Correct.
So to those 1,000 people who are watching, why have you not liked it yet? We're waiting.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Rania, for being the bad cop.
Bully your audience anytime.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. Well, we have more with the Chuckster and Jim Jordan.
If you are concerned about the weaponization of the Justice Department in the Biden years, why not investigate the Trump years?
We're going to look at threats to the First Amendment. We're going to look at this. What Elon Musk through the Twitter files has displayed is unbelievable. The idea that the FBI was paying Twitter $3.4 million to help them suppress information.
That's not how it works.
Keep information from the American
Twitter to comply with subpoenas. That's the federal law.
Do you think it was okay?
That's a law Congress passed.
Do you think it's okay for the FBI to be meeting every week and suppressing information about a conservative and suppressing the Hunter Biden story, which we know is true? Do you think that's all right? I think most Americans say, no, that's probably information.
I understand, but this is a private organization that made this decision.
With pressure from the...
I love that answer from Chuck. It's a private organization, okay? So it's fine to censor factual reporting after a bunch of former intelligence officials just declare that it comes from Russia. So, yeah, it's fine. It's private. They can do what they want. I mean, NBC News is private too. So, and that's why they've been suppressing countervailing facts that don't serve their various narratives for years too. I mean, that's it's such an expression of contempt for what journalism is supposed to be and what, public space are supposed to be, which is free debate and not government intervention to silence inconvenient stories.
Do you remember that one day where Elon Musk just decided to suspend all of these mainstream journalists. Some of them were at NBC, some of them were at CNN.
Yeah.
Like just to be a jerk and, show what he could do.
Yeah.
And they were all these like liberal journalists who, for the most part, are like pretty pro censorship. But then suddenly you had NBC and CNN and all these organizations like releasing statements being like, reinstate our people. Now, so then that argument went out the window. Then it wasn't a private organization anymore.
Yeah.
Then it was like, this is a violation of the First Amendment. So these people are all just a bunch of hypocrites because they are happy to censor when it's their political opponents.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When it was Palestinians being censored, which is still happening.
Yeah.
And when it was anti-war voices, I mean, people, the line was, "Oh, it's a private company; they can do what they want." Yeah, or if it, and to be fair too, if it was conservative figures too, who were, oh yeah, private company, do what they want. But it's when neoliberals get
when like Aaron Rupert, that guy who like watches shows like this and then clips out parts and like tries to take them out of context. When that guy was suddenly like taken out Twitter, it was like a huge violation. Everybody, all these like blue checks freaked out. We're blue checks too, but we're different kinds of blue checks. But they all freaked out, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't appreciate that. I don't want to see journalists being suspended and censored, but at the same time, you can't not almost like take some satisfaction in watching the reaction from hypocrites.
Yeah. And it was a brief censorship too. It was like 24 hours or something, maybe a few days.
And they were like, "This is the biggest." They were acting like it was like an atrocity of epic proportions. This is like a Holocaust of journalists or something. Like, oh God, I'm sorry if that was like a bad joke. I took it too. That's what they were acting though. You would have thought like
they were.
They were like, this is a war crime.
The government, that's the point. I can understand a private organization can do it. I don't think it's right, but there shouldn't be pressure from the government. When is the FBI just going to stay out of election process? Just let we the people decide. Let the American people decide. In 2016, they spied on Trump's campaign. 2018, it was the Mueller investigation. 2020, they helped suppress the Hunter Biden story. 2022, they raided the home of a former president 91 days before an election. Maybe just let the American people decide. Maybe just stay out.
But you keep talking about this raid on Donald Trump. The amount of time, there was 9 months between the initial action that the archives made for a request of documents before they even turned it over to the Justice Department.
Doc talk alert, everybody. We got some doc talk.
Finally.
The subpoena was issued 60 days before they actually executed the subpoena. And more importantly, the only time the public found out about it is because Donald Trump told the public about it. This was not some sort of, you paint it as a picture of the FBI did this, this, and this within hours of each other, when it was actually a year and a half of Donald Trump not complying with any of the requests from National Archives. A year and a half. This is not some sort of proof that somehow that they've weaponized and playing politics over here.
They raided Trump's home. They haven't raided Biden's home.
Because Biden didn't defy a subpoena, Congressman. He defied a subpoena. By the way, he had 60 days to comply with the subpoena before they actually executed
President Trump had documents locked in a room with Secret Service protecting them. President Biden had documents in his garage and in a think tank that was funded by the Chinese. I think there's a difference. President Trump was the only guy who was actually president.
I'm not sure what that means, but the think tank was funded by the Chinese.
I have no idea.
Yeah. I mean, there's the thing. It's like Democrats, they have their obsession is Russia, and Republicans, their obsession is China. And they're always trying to blame the other party of being in the pay of their respective boogeyman. It's hard to keep track.
Exactly.
Yeah. But look how indignant Chuck is. I mean, this is he's getting fired up over this one.
Do you think that he practices in front of a mirror like a lawyer? Like
yeah.
Like a lawyer delivering like an opening statement or a closing argument or something.
That's fair,
Yeah. I could see him doing that.
Yeah.
Look how happy he's like. Really, he's like performing. It's a performance. He's an actor.
But look, Ronnie. I mean, I'll be transparent. I'll admit to sometimes like having like mock debates with before I'm having like a debate or something like that, I'll pretend to have like a mock debate with my opponent.
You have to prepare. Yeah, you got to prepare. But look how happy he is. He's like, oh, I'm going to deliver the line I've been practicing. He said it. I got him in my trap. I know exactly what to say back to that. Like the pride in his eyes is just, look at you, Chuck.
He's been waiting for this all week. It's true.
Yeah.
You talk about that. You're worried about the Chinese and Hunter Biden.
I'm just saying.
Are you worried about the Chinese and Donald Trump?
They took pictures of.
Are you at all worried about that?
No.
What about the Chinese and Trump, sir? What about like?
But what does that even mean?
Yeah.
All of the Chinese and Trump. I mean,
Yeah.
if anything, Trump has made it very clear that he despises China.
Yeah, he hates China. Should we have
With a
two
passion.
new? Should we have a new Mueller investigation, like Trump and China,
Yeah.
and then
China-gate.
have them investigate Biden and China too? I mean, this is just like this will never end. This will never end with these people.
Oh, it won't. It won't.
I'm not, but they took pictures of the documents at Trump's house. They took no pictures of documents. In fact, it's not just me who would like to know what went on here. Senator Warner said it last week. He would like to get a briefing. He wants to see the documents.
No
and guess what? The FBI is saying no, but they took pictures of the folders in Trump's home.
The issue is not whether what Joe Biden did.
No, the issue is equal
why
treatment
is
under the law. That's the issue.
No, the
equal
issue is
treatment
you
under
do
the law.
not seem to ever see the same conspiratorial problems when it's a Republican.
Those were all investigated for 4 years, and they can.
So his problem is just that you don't believe the same conspiracy theories that I do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
That's like literally what he just said. He even used the word conspiracies.
yeah. You don't see Republicans believing, as I do, that Trump was blackmailed with a P tape by Vladimir Putin. That's a problem.
Christ.
How do you respond to that?
Gotcha.
Yeah. I feel like, and meanwhile, like the rest of the country is watching this and they're like, how is this relevant to anyone? You know,
I don't know who watches this on Sunday morning. Like the kind of person who actually watches this on Sunday morning and believes they're being informed is somebody who has servants. I just can't imagine like somebody whose servant is like bringing them tea or coffee or brunch is like watching this thinking they're getting smart, but they're actually getting dumber. So I just can't imagine a normal person being like, no, sorry, I can't come to brunch, you guys. I have to watch the Sunday morning news shows, or I can't hang out with my kids. I have to watch the Sunday morning news shows, and then being entertained by this.
Well, listen, speaking of issues that are gripping the nation, people cannot sleep because something horrible happened this week, which was that Adam Schiff was removed from the House Intelligence
Don't
Committee.
Remind me. I'm still in mourning.
We are in trouble, everybody. Adam Schiff was removed from the House Intelligence Committee by Kevin McCarthy because McCarthy cited Schiff's record of lying to the public and claiming he had evidence of Trump-Russia collusion and other matters. Eric Swalwell was removed because Eric Swalwell also claimed that Trump was a Russian agent, but Eric Swalwell apparently had some issues with his romantic relationship or his relationship with a suspected Chinese spy. And then Ilhan Omar also was removed from the House Foreign Affairs Committee because Republicans don't like what she said about Israel. Mm-hmm. And all of them, unfortunately, are getting lumped together, whereas I support what Ilhan Omar said, but she's being lumped together with Swalwell and Schiff, and the three of them appeared together on CNN to discuss their removal from House committees.
Kevin McCarthy is following through on one of his promises to retaliate against Democrats who voted to remove 2 Republicans from House committees back in 2021. Now that he has the gavel, McCarthy this week removed 2 Democrats from a key committee and is working on a third. All 3 of those Democrats join me now. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar of Minnesota and Congressman Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell of California. Thank you.
Also, a quick question on what I said. Ilhan Omar is not being removed yet, but McCarthy's trying to remove her. Swalwell and Schiff, they've been removed from their committees.
One and all for joining me. Appreciate it. I know that there's a lot to talk about in terms of the politics of what's happening here, but I want to air out some of the substance of the Republican allegations. And Congressman, I'll start with you. You said that there was direct evidence of the fact that Donald Trump colluded with Russia back in 2016. Special counsel Robert Mueller said in his report, quote, "The investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government." Republicans argue that's proof that you used your position on the Intelligence Committee to intentionally mislead Americans, which is why you should not be on that committee.
If you read the Mueller report, he makes clear, even in the first few pages of the report, that he states no conclusion on whether Donald Trump and his campaign colluded with the Russians.
False. And she just quoted to you the passage of the Mueller report that said we did not establish that Trump campaign colluded with the Russians. And now he's saying they make no conclusion.
Can't get that past. You can't get anything past Shifty Schiff. Okay.
He is such a pathological liar. He's incapable of telling the truth. I mean, it gets worse. But he cannot tell the truth. He has a problem. He really does.
But what he does reveal in his report, what we found in our investigation, is that Donald Trump's campaign manager was sharing internal campaign polling data and their strategy for key battleground states with an agent of Russian intelligence, while that same unit of Russian intelligence was helping the Trump campaign.
Also a lie. The Mueller. So again, Schiff is talking about Konstantin Kilimnik, this aide to Paul Manafort, who Schiff says is a Russian agent, is a Russian intelligence officer. But the Mueller report did not call Kilimnik a Russian spy. He was an associate of Paul Manafort, and they tried to vaguely suggest, without asserting it, that Kilimnik has some sort of connection to Russian intelligence. All they said was that he has ties to Russian intelligence.
I'm sure Dana Bash is going to correct him and emphasize that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's so the Mueller report and Schiff's own investigation never called this guy a Russian spy. And the Mueller report also shows that Kilimnik is sharing polling data with everybody. He's sending it to American contacts, and he's talking to U.S. officials because he was actually he was a source used by the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine, which these people never talk about. That somehow this Russian spy was also a trusted person in the U.S. Embassy inside of Kiev. So he's lying about what the Mueller report says. Now, the claim that Kilimnik is a spy came more than a year later from the Senate Intelligence Committee. But and I've written about this extensively, they show no evidence for the claim he's a spy, and they're basing all of their claims off of evidence that was collected by Mueller. So they didn't get any more than Mueller did, and that's why nobody in law enforcement or the intelligence community in the U.S. has ever called this guy Kilimnik a Russian spy. That's only an invention of Democrats like Schiff in claiming it. But in the process, he's even falsely characterizing what the Mueller report found. And it's like he's such a liar that he lies so often in such a short amount of time, but it takes a second to debunk it because no one else does.
I mean, quickest way to get drunk is take a shot every time Adam Schiff lies. Like it really is kind of stunning. Like I can think of few figures who just one after another just roll it out.
And again, the reason why Paul Manafort wanted polling data being shared is because he wanted to show people, his former business associates, that he was valuable and that Trump had a chance of winning. Because he wanted to make money off of his position on the Trump campaign. But people like Schiff turned this into a Russian plot to go over polling data that somehow was, by the way, was publicly available. It was like published in Real Clear Politics. Turn that into the secret plot to like scheme how to influence the election. It's blue and on.
Yeah.
Both with a hacking and dumping operation, as well as a social media operation to elect Donald Trump. To most Americans, that
Yes, the social media operation, putting aside the hacking allegation, which I think is false, the social media operation that had dumb memes that were not even about the election, that mostly ran either way before the election or after the election. In his mind, this is a Russian plot to influence people on social media.
as collusion. Now, whether it's proof beyond a reasonable doubt of the crime of conspiracy, that's what Bob Mueller was. Intelligence, while that same unit of Russian intelligence was helping the Trump campaign, both with a hacking and dumping operation, as well as a social media operation to elect Donald Trump. To most Americans, that is collusion. Now, whether it's proof beyond a reasonable doubt of the crime of conspiracy, that's what Bob Mueller was talking about. I've always distinguished between the two, but let me just set the record straight. This is only one of a shifting series of rationalizations and pretexts that McCarthy is using.
Well, let me give you another.
He should have said no pun intended when he said this is part of a shifting series of reasons. He should have said no pun intended.
Shifty Schiff.
Yeah.
Says that this is part of a pattern. Ahead of the first Trump impeachment, you said the committee had not spoken to a whistleblower. In fact, that turned out not to be true. The Washington Post said so in their fact check.
The Washington Post identified that, yes, before the person became a whistleblower, they sought advice from the committee. When I was asked the question, I thought they were referring to whether we had brought the whistleblower in. And I should have been more clear in my answer. But
yeah, so that's actually, I've never seen him kind of admit that he lied. He's not fully admitting it, but he's kind of admitting it, where he said that he never met with this purported whistleblower who blew the whistle on Trump's phone call with Zelensky, which got him impeached the first time. Schiff said they never met, and then he had to admit that they actually did. His committee did meet with this person. He's kind of admitting that there. That's that's a step forward for him, I guess.
Well, that's good. We should applaud him for.
But again, let's be clear what's really going on here. McCarthy has said Adam Schiff prosecuted the case against Trump. The Ukraine impeachment was a hoax. He's given 15 explanations. The only real explanation is he needs Marjorie Taylor Greene's vote. He needs Paul Gosar.
No, McCarthy's said that Schiff lied to the American people about saying he had evidence of collusion. And then he lied about meeting with that whistleblower. Those have been the reasons all along. Schiff wants people to think that he was such an effective challenger to Trump that they can't handle having him on committees. When meanwhile, if our Republicans, I'd be thrilled with Adam Schiff because making him the face of the Democrats makes Democrats look unhinged. So the idea that he's like somehow, and that's why after Trump's first impeachment over Ukraine, because Trump wasn't being sufficiently subservient to the proxy war in Ukraine back then, Trump ended that impeachment with the highest approval ratings of his presidency. So thank you, Adam Schiff, for all your service. I mean, if you're a Republican, like that's what they should be thinking.
What's Adam Schiff's approval rating? Is he going to win? He's running for Senate, right?
He's running for Senate. Ugh.
Yeah. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
Vote. He wants to retaliate for their removal from the committee. And apparently he believes I was very effective in exposing his misconduct, Donald Trump's misconduct, and that's what they're trying to stop. I think that he benefits from having these smears repeated, and that's part of what he gains from it. But this is a pretext and nothing more.
Yeah, and which is why.
Imagine being the leading promoter of a conspiracy theory that the president is an agent of Russia, okay? And given all that's happened since and how many times that conspiracy theory has been humiliated, and still going on television and claiming that you've been effective.
Well, part of it, Aaron, is because nobody challenges him. Like, I think we're going to watch Ilhan Omar at some point soon. I want everybody to pay attention to how he's getting zero backlash from Dana Bash, the interviewer. And then when we watch her interrogate Ilhan Omar, we're going to see something very, very different than what she's doing right now.
Yes, let's jump to that.
Part of the problem of what you're saying is like he can go on television and lie like this because the entire mainstream media is like in on it.
Absolutely. And let's jump to that clip of Dana Bash taking a different approach with Ilhan Omar.
An effective political opponent.
Well, let me ask you, Congresswoman Omar, about what Republicans are saying about you, that there is a pattern of anti-Semitic and other controversial statements that make you unfit to sit on, in your case, the House Foreign Affairs Committee. I'm told that Republicans presented a list in their private meeting this past week. Included in that list is that you said that Israel hypnotized the world. You said Israel is an apartheid regime, that politicians with pro-Israel stances were all about the Benjamins, which you very notably apologized for, that you support the BDS movement, which a lot of people think is rooted in anti-Semitism, compared the U.S. and Israel to Hamas and the Taliban. I want to give you a chance to respond to all of that, which they say is a clear pattern.
Notice how she's being impugned here, not for any kind of conduct issues, like, for example, in the case of Schiff lying and abusing his position on the House Intelligence Committee. She's just being confronted here for her views. And those views include referring to Israel as an apartheid regime. Well, does people not think that? Does anyone seriously think that Israel is not an apartheid regime when it rules over millions of people who and steals their land and steals their water
and literally subjects a certain people to different laws, subjects Palestinians to different laws than Jewish citizens of Israel? That is like the most blatant form of apartheid, to subject people to different laws based on their ethnicity or religion or whatever. But not only that, I mean, come on, at this point, you've got like Human Rights Watch calling Israel an apartheid state, and Amnesty International, and like every major human rights organization. I mean, Katie Halper made that video that basically lays out the legal framework for why it's apartheid. So really, the exceptions here are like people like Dana Bash. I'm sure I imagine what she's stating is actually what she believes.
Oh, absolutely.
She believes BDS is anti-Semitic. Or based in anti-Semitism. She believes that Israel is not an apartheid state. And she's just using this as an opportunity to rehash this stuff and then grill Ilhan Omar and try to make her feel uncomfortable and try to frame it as though she is an actual anti-Semite.
And I think Ilhan Omar gives too much ground here in her response, but we'll see.
Yeah, I might have used words at the time that I didn't understand were trafficking in anti-Semitism when that was brought.
She wasn't trafficking in anti-Semitism. So basically, it was on Twitter, right, where someone.
And before she was a representative, by the way, before she was in Congress.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a tweet. I believe it was a tweet that was like that from before she was in Congress. It was during one of Israel's like bombing campaigns in Gaza. And somebody dragged it out or like found it and posted it.
I think she
right?
might have been. I think she might. I think she was in Congress because I remember her tweeting it. I remember she basically tweeted all about the Benjamins baby.
That was when she was in Congress. The thing about Israel hypnopatizing the world. Was from before.
Okay.
Yeah, that's from what I understand.
Yeah. So, but all about the Benjamins baby was her saying that AIPAC, this lobby group, has a major influence in Capitol Hill, which is true. They brag about it. You can read stories about how much money they spend to sway people, and she was just saying that they have a lot of money, and they use it to push their pro-apartheid policies. So she just tweeted all about the Benjamins baby, and that elicited a freak out. And she apologized, but now she's sort of. She's saying that she trafficked in anti-Semitic tropes. No, she didn't. She pointed out that this lobby group that brags about having a lot of money and influencing Congress has a lot of money and influences Congress. That's what she was saying. And I wish she hadn't backtracked.
And of course, the funny part of all that is the freak out was in response to AIPAC being very upset and using their influence to pressure people to like attack her. So it actually kind of proved the point. In the end, that in fact it is when it comes to politics in America, all about the Benjamins, like on any other issue.
And this, by the way, is a good example of how like leftists need to. I shouldn't say need. Leftists should think about not catering to disingenuous attacks. So I remember when Ilhan Omar tweeted all about the Benjamins baby. I thought it was right and it was funny. Mm-hmm. I remember some leftists saying, "No, this was offensive, and she should apologize."
Really?
And
God. Yeah. Okay, I didn't know that happened.
First of all, have a sense of humor. Can we have a sense of humor, and also can we have a little backbone? Because there was nothing wrong at all with what she said, and she's still being forced to apologize for it.
Brought to my attention, I apologized. I owned up to it. That's the kind of person that I am, and I continue to work with my colleagues and my community. To fight against anti-Semitism. Now, I've never compared or made any comparisons. What I was referencing was a case that was in front of the ICC. And if they want to debate political differences, and that's something that we should all have the opportunity to do so, but to smear someone and their character, their love for their country, and the work that they get to do on a committee is wrong, and it is politically motivated, and in some cases is motivated by the fact that many of these members don't believe a Muslim, a refugee, an African should even be in Congress, let alone have the opportunity to serve on the Foreign Affairs Committee.
Before. I mean, it sounds like you're accusing Kevin McCarthy of racism.
It sounds like you're accusing. I mean, just even that response is that's the first Dana Bash. Like, just pay attention to everything she responds with. Sorry, just the way she's like, oh no, it sounds like you're accusing Kevin McCarthy of racism. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if you're targeting a woman of color who has been outspoken in defending the rights of an oppressed people who are being occupied by an ethno-supremacist state, and you're targeting her for challenging that, then yeah, you are being racist.
Well, I also like her response here, by the way. I think she does a really good job of responding to that stupid question.
Making any accusations, I'm just laying out the facts. You remember Donald Trump coming into my state and saying, Muslims, Somali refugees are infiltrating our country. You remember Marjorie Taylor Greene coming to Congress after Rashida and I got sworn in and saying, Muslims are infiltrating Congress. You remember Boebert saying that I was a terrorist. What did McCarthy do? He said she apologized and we don't have to worry about her Islamophobia. That never happened. And so these people are okay with Islamophobia. They're okay with trafficking in their own ways in anti-Semitism. They are not okay with having a Muslim have a voice on that committee.
Well, let me ask you, Congressman, you are Jewish, and you have said that you were.
And this is awkward for Schiff because Schiff is a pro-Israel fanatic, and now he has to defend Ilhan Omar, which I know he doesn't want to do, but for partisan reasons he has to here. So
take one for the team, Schiffy.
take one for the team, Schiff. Yeah,
We're worried about some tropes that the congressman used, and which again, I want to be clear, you apologize for that one, all about the Benjamin.
By the way, can I just share that, when Dana Bash says the words to Adam Schiff, you are Jewish, my heart sinks a little bit because I'm Jewish too. It's just the thought that Adam Schiff and I are joined in that way. It's hard. It's hard for me. This is a moment for
it's
me.
okay. Me and Dana Bash are both women, and so I don't like sharing that. I don't like sharing that with her.
Do you believe that the pattern that your colleague here has put out there is, as Republicans are saying and some Democrats say, rise to the level of anti-Semitism?
Why isn't she asking Ilhan Omar if she is embarrassed by Adam Schiff?
Yeah.
Like, does your colleague lying to the public about having evidence of collusion?
Hey, Ilhan Omar, you're a not liar. You're somebody who doesn't lie. How do you feel about your, just no.
Yeah.
How do you feel about your colleague over here lying and embarrassing your entire party?
And
no.
like helping to push us into a nuclear threatening Cold War with Russia. Are you uncomfortable with that? I mean, no. That'd be a great question, though.
Dana, I believe that this is all a pretext. And if you look at the leader of the Republican Party, Donald Trump, he is dining with white nationalists and anti-Semites. The people that Kevin McCarthy just put on committees like Marjorie Taylor Greene and others are speaking at white nationalist rallies. This is, as my colleague said, Bakersfield BS. This is all pretextual. And I don't accept the premise that this has anything to do with the conduct of any.
Well, that's a very California reference, Bakersfield BS. I guess that's a term they use in California because Bakersfield is a town there.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't catch that.
Yeah. It's kind of mean to Bakersfield. They're so, because McCarthy's from Bakersfield, I guess. So
I guess he doesn't need them to win the Senate or something.
I guess not. No, yeah. Schiff's turning his back on
campaign's going to a great start.
Yeah. It'd be awesome though if Bakersfield is in Schiff's district and they become the margin of difference. How's that for BS?
That's going to be awesome. I hope it happens. I really don't want Adam Schiff to be a senator. This guy does not need half more power.
This is merely the weakness of Kevin McCarthy's speakership, that he's so reliant on these extreme members. I mean, how can you, on the one hand, suggest that these are some kind of legitimate basis for unseating Democrats from committees and put someone like George Santos on any committee? The hypocrisy just grabs you by the throat. So I don't want to dignify the pretext that they're giving for any of us. What they're doing is really catering to the most extreme members of their conference.
I do, though, want to ask, because this has been out there, and it is definitely a big issue that we're going to hear a lot more about on the House floor next week, Congresswoman. So when you apologized.
So look, it's really, really pushing this, like, as if this is the biggest issue among the three of them. Ilhan Omar criticizing Israel.
I mean, it's also like, look how long she spent grilling this woman.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like on this issue. And it's I'm sorry, this is like not even real. Like it's not, and obviously it's complete BS. Like, and it's almost like she basically agrees with Kevin McCarthy. That's what I am getting from this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Dana agrees with Kevin McCarthy and agrees that Ilhan Omar isn't fit. And it's just completely outrageous. And this is happening at a time when Israel is just like, has like this like fascistic government in power that of course the morning news shows aren't covering. And if they are covering it, they're going to be making excuses for it. And they've killed like 35 Palestinians in 2023. Guess what? 2023 has only been 30 days. Like, and we're already over 30 Palestinians. And you're going to sit here and talk about Ilhan Omar's an anti-Semite because she said these totally legitimate things. Like,
yep.
Give me a break.
Yeah. And that's why I wish Ilhan Omar had brought that up, because she doesn't actually talk about any of that in her responses.
Yeah.
And this would have been a good way for her to turn the tables and say, like, there's no,
By the way,
no one has any moral superiority over her. They're the ones who are apologizing and not covering the crimes that Israel is committing, and she shouldn't apologize for calling that out. And she didn't here, and I thought that was a lost opportunity. But I think she's, anyway. But here's a bit more.
For all about the Benjamins comment, you said anti-Semitism is real, and I'm grateful for Jewish allies and colleagues who are educating me on the painful history of anti-Semitic tropes. What did you learn?
A lot.
What did you learn from criticizing Israel, and how you won't do that again?
I mean, it would have been awesome if she was like, I learned that it is all about the Benjamins.
But it's like, this is the only time no one gets grilled for their political views quite like Ilhan Omar for criticizing Israel, when all these warmongers who support invading every country, like whoever it is, Liz Cheney or Lindsey Graham or Mitch McConnell or,
What did you learn from him, from the way that that invasion went?
Yeah.
Miss Cheney?
Yeah.
Like,
what did you learn from supporting the murder of hundreds of thousands of people? That's a question that would never, ever get posed.
No.
What did you learn from tweeting all about the Benjamin's baby? That's the question we get.
That's the question.
Certainly did not or was not aware that the word hypnotize was a trope. I wasn't aware of the fact that there are tropes about Jews and money. That has been very enlightening.
By the way. I don't believe that anyone is aware.
I don't believe it either.
I don't believe anyone's not aware about that. Like, it's like sad that she even has to say that.
Yeah.
And like that she's actually apologizing, because what she said was not even that trope. What she said was about lobbying. It was so clear. And for her to sit there and then say, like, that's just a stupid response. Yes, there obviously are. That's like one of the major tropes about Jews is Jews have all the money. Jews control the money. Aaron Rupert's totally going to, by the way, clip that out and be like, Rania's saying Jews control all the money on Useful Idiots. So you're welcome, Aaron. But anyways, but no, it's actually sad that that's her response. I think you're right that she concedes way too much, because then it ends up leading her to have to say stupid things like that.
Well, all right, that's enough of that one, and let's go to a little bit of Ukraine. So, former Defense Secretary Robert Gates, who served under the Bush administration and then stayed over for a little bit under Obama because
bipartisanship.
He was on Meet the Press to talk about Ukraine.
Welcome back. This week, President Biden announced that the United States will send 31 Abrams tanks to Ukraine. It's a move the Pentagon had resisted for months, saying they would be simply too difficult to operate and maintain for the Ukrainian military. But the announcement followed pressure by U.S. allies, particularly Germany, which refused to send their tanks unless the U.S. gave them cover and did the same. What's interesting is in our new NBC News poll, 50% of Americans disapprove of President Biden's handling of the Ukraine war right now. Just 49% support providing Ukraine more weapons and funding going forward. These are numbers that suggest Biden may have a timeline when it comes to political support for U.S. involvement. And it's not just a partisan divide, there's a generational one here. Americans who lived through the Cold War, have a memory of the Berlin Wall, are more likely to support funding. If you don't have a memory of it, you're less likely to support it. Just hours after the U.S.
Crazy. So if you weren't indoctrinated with Cold War propaganda, then you're not going to be inclined to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on weapons to make sure that Crimea can be a part of Ukraine and not Russia. Imagine that.
I love his framing of it. He's like, if you don't remember it,
you
don't remember the Berlin Wall.
Yeah.
And European allies announced the new tanks. Russia unleashed airstrikes targeting Ukraine's power grid, killing 11 people in those attacks across the country. Ukraine's President Zelensky called on allies to toughen sanctions, and Ukrainian officials have now asked for F-16 fighter jets. So, how does this end? Joining me now is former Defense Secretary and head of the CIA, Robert Gates. He has served under 8 years.
How does this end? Armageddon. That's how it ends, Chuck. Because that's the policy you're encouraging every single week.
Oh, Aaron, you are so dramatic. Just because 2 nuclear-armed countries are pointing their nukes at each other and suggesting nuclear attacks doesn't mean it's gonna happen.
Yeah. U.S. presidents of both parties. Secretary Gates, always good to see you.
Thank you.
We will lower the temperature here a little bit. I want to start with something you wrote with Secretary Condoleezza Rice about about 2 weeks ago about the war right now. We are convinced that Putin believes time is on his side, that he can wear down the Ukrainians, and that the U.S. and European unity and support for Ukraine will eventually erode and fracture. To be sure, the Russian economy and people will suffer as the war continues, but Russians have endured far worse. Well, you just saw.
That's a good point. In the 1990s,
True.
after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the U.S. came in with its economic advisors, imposed shock therapy, destroyed what was left of the country's economy, made it so that a couple of oligarchs could get very, very wealthy and pillaging state resources, and the people suffered. So he's right that Russians have endured a far worse. It was
2
because of
million
us.
people. 2 million people died, and up to 2 million people died, and on top of that, crime went up like crazy. The actual age, like I can't think of the word for how long people live. Why is my brain suddenly like malfunctioning? Lifespan. The average lifespan in Russia. Sorry about that, guys. The average lifespan in Russia actually like dropped by a few years. Like it was so horrible what happened there.
Yeah.
So right now Russians are fine. Like in terms of the economy, the ruble's still strong because most of the world has refused to get on board with American and European sanctions on Russia. So this is actually like the truest thing I've ever seen Robert Gates and Condoleezza Rice say. But there's going to be a but. There's going to be a but.
I think GDP in Russia shrunk a little bit, obviously, but everyone was predicting like the collapse of the Russian economy.
There'd be bread lines. They were predicting bread lines.
Biden was saying that the ruble has become rubble. That's just not true. Yeah. And in this article, Rice and Gates also pointed out that Ukraine is in dire straits. Millions of refugees, large parts of its country occupied by Russia, including like areas of valuable agricultural land and industry. And they're talking about how terrible things are for Ukraine. It's really dire, bleak the way they describe it. But their answer to all this is just more weapons. That's what they want.
Kill more Ukrainians.
That's what Gates is here to advocate. And by the way, Gates, after serving in the Bush administration, so he knows firsthand about illegal invasions. He then went on to serve under Obama, where he oversaw Obama's war on Libya and helped turn Libya into a slave state. So he's
also that was a war carried out by NATO, guys. NATO,
there we go.
Force of freedom and democracy in the world.
Yeah.
What I was leading in with, we have public support is there, but it's fading. It looked like this week NATO support is there, but it could fracture. How much time does the West and Ukraine have here?
I think we still have quite a bit of time, Chuck. I think there's still broad bipartisan support in the Congress for helping Ukraine. You know, when it comes to public opinion,
I just want to say
this is basically.
Well, what he just said before the public opinion comment he's about to make is that when he said that there's still bipartisan support in Congress, it shows what a lack of democracy we have, because he's essentially saying poll numbers don't matter. Mm-hmm. What matters is that we can get representatives in Congress to do what we want about this war.
Yes. And when he says we have time, of course we have time, because we're not the ones dying.
No, right. Yeah.
We're just sitting back and like pouring in weapons and letting other people bleed for us. So we have all the time in the world.
Basically the responsibility of the president to educate people about why this is necessary. Why must we confront Putin in Ukraine? So we don't end up confronting him somewhere where our own forces are directly involved.
You think?
So that's a really interesting rationale. So we have to fight Russia and Ukraine so we don't have to fight him somewhere else, even though we are sending in now all of our weapons and our intelligence. So we are basically fighting Putin, Ukraine. And of course, again, Putin has not been able to, or Russia has not been able to take over Ukraine, and they've lost a lot of people.
Well, they haven't really tried to. I mean, if we're being honest here, like if you look at what Russia, for example, did in Syria,
right,
versus what it's done in Ukraine, like it's held back. It's that they're not trying to take over Ukraine. They clearly.
But their argument is that he is trying to take over Ukraine. So if you follow their logic, if he can't take over Ukraine, then how could he possibly take over anywhere else?
Yeah, that's true.
And of course, there are no, he has no, there's a reason why Russia put out treaty proposals to try to deal with the issue of Ukraine, because Ukraine used to be a part of Russia. There's millions of people there who identify as Russian. It has ties to Ukraine. There aren't millions of Russians inside of Sweden and Finland and other places. Like Ukraine is a particular significance is right there on Russia's border. And the idea that then Putin's going to go on from this to invade elsewhere is just, it's insane. It's totally insane.
Do you think they believe it, or is this just a talking point?
I think he believes. Oh, who knows what goes on inside the minds of these people? But I think they do convince themselves that they believe it. Yes. Yeah. Okay, let's hear a little bit more.
He's not done that. I mean, I feel like he's done that. I don't know if the public's listening. I mean, part of me wonders, does the memory of Afghanistan and Iraq cloud the trust when the American
cloud?
public?
I love that framing. Does the memory of the epic failures and atrocities in Iraq and Afghanistan cloud the judgment of this stupid American public that is just not understanding that these are all good things? Yeah. War is good. Their judgment's clouded.
Yeah. Are the American people insufficiently propagandized where they can still remember that their government illegally invaded and destroyed these countries?
It's a brave question for Chuck to ask, though, because essentially he's asking, am I not doing my job well enough? Am I deficient in my ability to propagandize the public?
Yeah. Did I fuck up? Tell me honestly. Tell me honestly. Did I not do my job? Did I fail? It's okay. It's okay.
Did I do bad, Daddy? Did I do bad, Daddy? Daddy Gates.
I can try harder.
May or may not have with these things.
Well, it's one of those messages that has to be repeated over and over and over again. You can't make one speech or
like propaganda over and over and over and over again. Yes.
Give a press conference or something like that. You have to keep pounding away. But I think it's also incumbent on the members of Congress who are supportive of this when they go back into their districts to help the president in terms of helping people understand why we need to help Ukraine. And I think the alliance is holding together really well. I think if you had said a year ago that Europe will go from more than 40% dependency on Russia for oil and gas, and they're now less than a year later 0 to 15% dependent. That's extraordinary.
I was just going to say,
he can't contain a smile.
And if you had said a year ago that a major pipeline connecting Russia and Germany carrying energy was going to be blown up, and that the U.S. was going to celebrate that, we saw this week Victoria Nuland celebrated the bombing of the Nord Stream 2. In Congress, she appeared and she said that the administration is gratified that the Nord Stream 2 is a hulk of metal at the bottom of the sea. If you had said that a year ago, some people at least would have been surprised. I wouldn't have been, but some people would have been.
But we still don't know who did it. We have no idea.
No, mystery.
So confusing who might have done that. But we're really happy it happened.
All right, everybody. Well, this has been a great show. Rania, where can people find your work?
Well, people can find my work at Breakthrough News on YouTube. So those of you who are watching after this is over, look up Breakthrough News on YouTube and follow it if you haven't already, because that's where my show Dispatches airs. I do like once or twice a week, have interviews there. So, and also it's always fun to do this. Thank you, Aaron, for letting me fill in for Katie.
Well, thank you, Rania. It's always great to have you. And for people who want to support Useful Idiots, go to usefulidiots.substack.com where you get all kinds of bonus content. We're not doing Colin today, so we'll see you back here next time. Bye, everybody.